On a bright summer morning, the city of Corona teemed with life in anticipation of a single, monumental day, the return of the long-lost princess. The sun was barely cresting the rooftops, but already the streets thrummed with preparation. Stalls spilled with fresh flowers, streamers dangled from every available ledge, and the scent of baked pastries and ripe fruit perfumed the air. In the heart of it all, two unlikely figures stepped cautiously into the bustle: Rapunzel, dazed by freedom after a lifetime in isolation, and Flynn Rider, every bit the charming rogue but now finding himself strangely out of element amongst such honest joy. They were in disguise, adults blending clumsily into a world that had for so long been lost to one, and a hiding spot to the other. The town square beckoned like a stage set for an unplanned performance. Musicians, assembled by the fountain, were tuning their violins and flutes, preparing for the annual Kingdom Dance. For years, the festival marked the day the princess had been taken. This year, hope lingered in the air, indistinct but powerful. Rapunzel's wide green eyes darted across the scene. Men and women, shopkeepers, bakers, boatwrights, and farmers, were coaxing one another into motion, laughter rising and falling with the rhythm of the music. She watched as a flower vendor tucked a daisy behind the ear of an older merchant, as if to say, "Today, you mustn't let sorrow win." The simple sweetness transfixed her. Flynn nudged her gently, voice low. "Let's keep moving." But Rapunzel stood rooted, her hands clutching her satchel. "They're dancing," she answered, almost to herself. He had no intention of joining any celebration, and certainly not of dancing in the middle of the square like a storybook character. But any protest died in his throat as a group of townspeople formed a circle, beckoning new partners into their midst. Rapunzel hesitated, her longing so visible it ached. Then, unexpectedly bold, she grasped his hand and pulled him forward. Laughter spilled from her lips, a sound as sudden and bright as sunlight piercing the clouds. The music began in earnest, a buoyant waltz that insisted on movement, stilled doubts, and fleeting enchantments. It threaded through the square, winding under arched bridges, weaving between fountains and shop fronts. It brought new participants into the circle. Some were hesitant, tripping over rhythms. Others were old hands, guiding neighbors with the assurance of those who had done this 100 times. Rapunzel spun into the dance, awkward at first, her movements uncoordinated and vivid. She clung to Flynn, who, for his part, made a ghastly show of feigned confidence. Together they stumbled, laughed, and then found the beat, tentatively at first, then with mounting surety. The townspeople watched the pair with mild amusement. One older woman, headmistress of the city's school, took Rapunzel's hand, correcting her grip, and led her through the steps, feet grazing the smooth stones as the tempo quickened. Others joined in, forming concentric rings, hands linked. The circle spun wider, drawing all into its orbit. Market workers abandoned their carts and joined. An innkeeper twirled with his spouse, her laughter contagious, echoing under the open sky. Tailors, blacksmiths, and even a few officials, still in livery, epaulets catching glints of sun, stepped into the ring. Grown men and women, some stoic, some bashful, all swept into the infectious rhythm of the festival. The tune changed, evolving from a gentle waltz to a lively reel. Musicians grinned at one another, bowing their instruments with increased fervor. The square gave way to purposeful chaos as the dances shifted into folk steps, couples passing off partners and spinning into new formations. Rapunzel, cheeks flushed, let herself be led by shopkeepers and peddlers, her laughter rising and rising, mirrored by Flynn's rare and genuine smile. It was in these moments, feet stomping, hands clasping, silk skirts spinning out in a whirl, that the invisible barriers between strangers vanished. Hierarchies dissolved in the midst of shared movement. For one afternoon, everyone, outsider or not, noble or common, was simply a citizen of Corona, united by an old melody and hope as tactile as sunlight. As the dance quickened, people began to improvise, adding flourishes and leaps, inventing new steps or recalling half-remembered ones from years before. Rapunzel was swept into a round dance, arms looped with the apple seller and the captain of the guard, who both barked out instructions. Flynn, outwitted by a particularly agile seamstress, found himself spinning faster than he had in any chase, and by the looks of it, enjoying himself. By noon, the entire market square was a celebration, the kind that left no room for doubt or regret. Flower petals rained from the balconies, thrown by the town's shopkeepers in the upper stories. Banners billowed in breezes that carried the music beyond the square to distant courtyards and winding. Bakeries sent volunteers into the open to distribute bread and fruit. For a moment, the abundance of the feast felt endless. Between dances, Rapunzel wandered to the edges of the crowd, drinking in sights she'd only imagined from stories. Couples passed, breathless from the steps, calling out half-joking challenges to newcomers. The royal guards, normally vigilant and severe, paired up with merchants for a polka, outdone in both rhythm and stamina. Flynn found her by the fountain, a slice of peach in hand, eyes softer than they'd been in weeks. "You look happy," he said, as if the realization startled him. Rapunzel grinned, her eyes reflecting the fountain sunlight. I'm. She sought for the word, but found nothing large enough to describe it. The crowd thinned, regrouped, and danced again, as if the music wove them together with golden thread. Children, grown into adults now, having outlasted years of festival sorrow, danced, sang, and remembered how hope once felt.